But yeah, so welcome everyone. Thank you so much again for joining us. And I'm going to hand it over to Sophia to get us started. Thank you so much, Sophia.
Thank you, Maud. Welcome everyone on this Thursday afternoon. It's great to see those of you that we can see. Welcome back to those of you that have been joining us as the weeks have gone by. So here we are. We are close to 3 months into the COVID-19 drama. Lots of things have happened, and we have quite a bit to update people on. Today, June 11th, we are going to open up with a brief overview of the phase 2 reopening thresholds for the state of Oregon and what that means for this state. Then we're going to move on to talk about the evolution of the Paycheck Protection Program, which, as many of us know, got going in fits and starts, and there was feedback from the public. And then Congress did go back to the drawing board a couple of times to try and make this legislation more realistic and to fit the needs of small businesses better. So on the next slide, first about the Caputo Group. We offer your small to mid-sized business, big business expertise. So we do that through taking on HR, compliance, payroll, benefits, liability. And we also offer support services like this webinar to help keep businesses in touch with the changes that are affecting their operations. So moving on to the next slide, we've got some good news to report, especially here in the state of Oregon. You know, it looks like we really did manage to flatten the curve. The policies that Governor Brown put forth seem to be working. Oregon is currently the 4th lowest state in the United States with COVID-19 cases. Many sectors here were able to rally to the cause. The public, in large part, was compliant with the Stay Home, Save Lives executive order. I know that in my town, I certainly see a lot of observance of the parameters that were put in place for public safety. So what we have seen, and this is very, very important for us right now as we prepare to move on to phase 2, we have seen hospitalizations declining. And we had seen counties all over the state meeting the criteria for moving onward from phase 1 into phase 2. So that means that widespread testing is in place, that contact tracing is in place, and that surge capacity is in place, meaning that if we do have a resurgence, that these counties meet the criteria to be able to handle surges. So let's move on to the next slide. So a brief overview of phase 2 for the state of Oregon. Most counties are now transitioning to phase 2. I know our county started last Friday, and I noticed that it was a very conservative trickling into phase 2. It wasn't this big blowout like some people were thinking. 7 counties have not applied to the governor for transitioning into phase 2, and those are Clackamas, Hood River, Lincoln, Marion, Polk, and Washington counties. And then our most populous county, Multnomah, has not yet even applied for phase 1, but that is expected to happen tomorrow. So we'll see how that metro area fares as it prepares to go into phase 1. So just to recap, how do counties apply? to jump the phases? Well, the county officials submit letters to the governor confirming that they've met the safety and preparedness criteria. The governor and the Oregon Health Authority then evaluate those applications, and they either grant or deny permission. Counties who have been in phase 1 are expected to stay in phase 1 for a minimum of 3 weeks. And again, that is so that those factors can be monitored, so that there's not an uptick in cases. And sorry, whew, I think that went down the wrong tube, excuse me. Right, so counties have to have stayed in phase 1 for a minimum of 3 weeks, and the case numbers cannot be higher this week than they were in the prior week. So we have to see that continuing downward trend in cases. Moving on to the next slide. For those counties and those areas that are moving into phase 2 right now, the general consensus is buckle in for phase 2, because it's going to be a phase 2 summer. There is no preview for moving into phase 3 until at least September, and or a reliable vaccine or medicine coming out for COVID-19. So that's what summer is going to look like, at least for the state of Oregon. Highly recommended are still face masks, social distancing, and remote work. So social distancing is going to continue to be a thing. Face masks, although not mandatory or required, are highly recommended. Gatherings now can go from 50 indoor to 100 outdoor. So people who were planning, you know, small weddings and things like that, especially if they can socially distance, they're on. Bars and restaurants, the curfew has now been extended to midnight. Woo! And larger venues are going to be able to have up to 250 people, but they have to meet and demonstrate social distancing and sanitation requirements. Theaters, churches, pools, and spas now are opening during phase 2, but they must social distance, and they must demonstrate compliance with the guidance that has been set forth for those sectors by the Oregon Health Authority. Non-contact sports like tennis are now okay for outdoor venues. But sports where a lot of people are touching the same thing, like a basketball, and you have to get close to each other, those kinds of sports are still not on. Down there in the link is the Oregon Health Authority reopening tool. It's a really easy to use graphic that you can download, and it gives you a whole chart of what's required of each sector for different phases in the reopening. Sorry.
And while Sophia's just kind of clearing her throat for just a moment, give her a second. I do want to let you know that as we have those links, I'm posting them in chat, so you're more than welcome to share those, because once this is closed, the chat probably won't be accessible. So I would definitely, if you're interested in that OHA reopening tool, that link is in the chat, and you can save that to your someplace on your computer.
Thank you, Maud. Sorry, everyone. I've got some kind of a tickle in there. Well, anyways, let me keep talking. Okay. So on our next slide here, let's have a look at the updates on the economic recovery focusing on the Paycheck Protection Program, which was by far the most popular program that Congress put out to help businesses stay afloat during the economic downturn. There was quite a bit of feedback from the business community. And actually, I would say that a lot of that feedback was in the form of outcry. Businesses were dealing with plummeting revenues due to this crisis. And some of the feedback that, well, a lot of the feedback that came through was that even though the Paycheck Protection Program reduced payroll costs, it didn't do quite enough to offset the other fixed costs that are associated with doing business. So some of those proportions have been adjusted now to reflect the feedback that has come back from the business community. The NFIB, National Federation of Independent Business, surveyed 300,000 businesses to see how those PPPLs worked for them. And if you are interested, you can review the entire survey at that link, but I've pulled out a couple of things that I thought would be interesting for you to see. So on the next slide, this is from their survey. Is how helpful was the PPP loan in providing financial support for your business? So you can see that 66% of businesses said that the PPP loans were very helpful, 14% moderately helpful. And then we get into that little pie slice there where, it really didn't work out as great as people thought, or that it's too early to tell. That survey also will show you how many businesses had to deal with emergency paid sick leave and emergency paid family medical leave, which is what the Families First Coronavirus Response Act was put in place to take care of. And that was a very startling statistic for me to look at, because it seems that only 13% of small to mid-sized businesses ended up having to provide that. So it's interesting now that the data is coming out, statistics are coming out, and we're starting to look back on this phase now and compare those numbers to what it was we thought was going to happen 3 months ago when this whole drama began. So with the PPP loans, again, they are administered by the SBA, the Small Business Administration. They are forgivable loans if certain percentages are used for payroll. And so the forgiveness window and the forgiveness applications are now starting to become a thing for businesses who got the loans. So on the next slide, I just want to show you that this is the week where the vast majority of the loans are starting to come in. And so those businesses, especially under the original draft of the Paycheck Protection Program, would now have to be working on all of their documentation and proof that they used the money the way that they were supposed to have used the money, and putting that information into the application for forgiveness. So moving on to the next slide. One of the biggest pieces of feedback that came back from the business community was that 8 weeks was just not enough time to use that loan in the way that it was designed. And that also another big piece of feedback was that there were too many restrictions on the percentages, that the process was too complex, and a number of other things. So what happened last week of May was that Congress went back into session. Then they proposed this new act, which was just signed into law last week, June 15th, the Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act. So in a nutshell, what that new law did was it took a look at the feedback that came back from the business community, and then it is providing for additional time for businesses to qualify for forgiveness. It is provided for eased restrictions on the percentages that have to go to payroll. So it was, oh, I'm sorry, there's a typo there. It was originally 75%. Now it's 60% of the money has to go to payroll. It has attempted to streamline the process and reduce forgiveness complexity. And then it extends the period for the rehire date. So one of the conditions in the PPP loan was that you had to rehire your employees by June 30th. That's in a couple weeks. It has not proven to be a realistic expectation for businesses. So now that has been extended to December 31st. So really, really widening the scope for businesses, giving them room to breathe, and allowing for unknowns. We don't know, for example, how the current social unrest and all of the protesting is going to affect COVID numbers, and we don't know how that is going to affect the economy. So this has all been built into this new Flexibility Act. And then lastly, there's a new safe harbor to allow forgiveness of the forgiveness reduction, which happens when full-time equivalent employees are reduced. So, but in order to qualify for that, the business must be able to document that they were unable to rehire or return to the same level of business activity due to their efforts at compliance. So, you know, social distancing, to comply with social distancing, for example, a lot of businesses have simply had to reopen with a drastic reduction of the number of customers and clients that they can take, the sanitary requirements. So as that data is coming in and that feedback is coming in, Congress has responded to that and said, okay, we will extend the forbearance for those types of reductions. So let's have a look at the next slide now. We've got the PPPL deadlines and extensions. So the deadline for applying for a PPP loan stays the same. It's still June 30th. However, the forgiveness period has now been expanded. So originally it was from 8 weeks from the inception of the loan. Now it is 24 weeks from the inception of the loan or December 31st, whichever is earlier. The maturity date for the loan has also been extended. Originally it was 2 years, now it's 5 years. The employer payroll tax deferrals are 2 years. And what that means is that it allows the business to defer 50% of the employer's share of payroll taxes until 2021 and the other 50% until 2022. So you can see there's been a lot of breathing room that has been built into this new Flexibility Act. Okay, so on the next slide, talking about easing the restrictions. So we've got the eligible for forgivable expenses, like I said earlier. Now 60% of your Paycheck Protection Program loan has to go to payroll as opposed to the original 75%. We are still waiting on Small Business Administration guidance as to how that needs to be documented and put into the forgiveness application. And for their updated applications on that as well. So I know that there's been a lot of waiting for guidance and waiting for forms that has happened throughout this whole drama. I don't think that's really going to change because, you know, the administrations, the organizations that are involved in managing this crisis, they're learning as they go along too. So things change rapidly, and then adjustments have to be made. So there are going to be exceptions also in this new law for employee availability as it has to do with safety requirements. So for example, if an employer can't find qualified employees, maybe they need a specific skill set, or maybe they can't find qualified employees due to the risks associated with COVID-19 that are more prevalent in that business. There will be exceptions for rehiring and full-time equivalents having to do with that. There are exceptions for borrowers unable to restore their pre-COVID operations due to the compliance that I was talking about earlier. You know, social distancing, sanitation, or customer safety requirements for a lot of businesses mean reduced capacity, reduced productivity, reduced revenues. And so one of the things that those businesses will have to document is that they have to document that the requirements that have made it difficult for them to do business have to have been established by Health and Human Services, the CDC, or OSHA between March 1st and December 31st. So yeah, so that's the part about easing restrictions. And now there at the bottom is a really, really comprehensive, updated forgiveness FAQ that you can download. This is compliments of the Womble, Bond, and Dickinson law firm who followed this legislation very closely as it made its way through Congress and the president's desk. And they have updated all of the forgiveness requirements. And it's a very, very good document to use as your reference and your go-to for your forgiveness period. And then on the next slide, I'd like to let you know about an alternative for larger small to mid-sized businesses. This is called the Main Street Lending Program. It was part of the CARES Act, but a lot of businesses don't know about it because there was most of the focus was on the Paycheck Protection Program and also the economic injury disaster loans. Those were the two main ones that people were going for. But this is an alternative source of funding for your business, especially if it's a larger, small to mid-sized business and you were pretty much in sound condition pre-COVID-19. These are low interest loans that are operated through the Federal Reserve. It's a 3% loan, and it is a 4-year loan allowing for payment deferral for up to 1 year. The minimum loan amount is $500,000, and you can have a look at the information for applying for that loan if you're interested in the link that I provided at the bottom there. So just to have a look at our next slide here. We're almost done with today's update. The NFIB, National Federation of Independent Business, they are really on the front lines advocating for small businesses and in contact with Congress, relaying small business concerns to Congress. I know that their survey was very helpful in this act, the Flexibility Act. So please visit their website and definitely join them and support what they do, because they really are out there fighting for small businesses. Here is the current SBA Paycheck Protection Program forgiveness form. And then there's also the Oregon Health Authority Reopening Guidance Tool, the updated forgiveness FAQ, and the Main Street Lending Program link. So that is our update for this week. I think that it's great that that Congress actually listens and that they are responding to the feedback by the business community and seeking to establish more workable laws to help businesses stay afloat throughout this crisis. So again, we are the Caputo Group. And if you would like a free consultation on how your business can navigate COVID-19 paid sick leave and other issues associated with COVID-19 and employer responsibilities, please visit www.caputo-group.com. And then to rewatch this presentation and access the slide deck, you can use that link that's provided right there. And thank you. I want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. Thank you for being flexible about the new time. It's just an hour off, but I think that worked out pretty good for everyone. And so at this point, I will hand it back to Maude and she can open up the floor.
Hey, thank you so much, Sophia. Fantastic. Thank you for curating all of that great information for us. That's it's a lot, and I absolutely always appreciate these updates. We did have a question about are these payroll taxes just for federal or state also? And if the person who asked that, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself to ask for more clarification. So this, so the question came, let me go back to the slide that this question came from to kind of give it some context. So forgive me as the bunch of the slides kind of move. Where was that? Speaking about the deferral for the payroll taxes,
right,
in, and I will, let's see if I can help unmute you. How about that? Are you,
look at there. Thank you very much.
welcome.
So in it, I thought I had read that on the IRS website that if we received a paycheck protection loan, we would not be able to defer the payroll tax. So I was wondering if this was just talking about state, or did they change? And I did not see the update as to it would be both federal and state that you could maybe defer those payroll taxes.
That is a really good question. And I actually heard a question like that on another webinar that I attended about that. I don't have an answer to that right now, but I imagine that the IRS website would probably have information regarding that. Do you already have a PPP loan?
So I have a bookkeeping and payroll service, and several of my clients are approved for it. So I'm trying to stay in the loop.
Right.
With this.
Right, right.
I'm glad I found your guys' little webinar. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm wondering, if the SBA would also have an answer for that. No, but I think that would probably be the IRS, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I asked someone in the SBA and they referred me back. So I was just hoping that maybe there was an update. Sometimes, you know, the information isn't getting totally succinct all the way down. So
it's true. You know, part of this whole process has been just sort of waiting at the mouth of the river for the little bits of information to come out as they come out, and determine, you know, there's a lot of fact checking that we have to do, and there's a lot of I mean, I've got Post-it notes here all over my wall waiting for the answers on. And so I know that new guidance comes out all the time, and I will definitely take note of your question and put that on my research radar. And hopefully by this time next week, we'll have more guidance on that, and we'll be able to get some more clarity on that. But I'm sorry that I don't have a clear answer for you today.
okay, well, thank you.
Thank you too.
I'm Sophia, is your research radar a sticky note? Is that what I was hearing?
Sticky notes everywhere. You don't see what's behind this screen. It's like a jungle of sticky notes.
That's pretty fantastic. Is there anyone else who has any questions? I mean, these, again, I think Susan and Ralph really kind of hit the nail on the head. This is such a complex, ever-evolving whatever you want to call it. There's so many questions coming out. I'm wondering if anyone else has any questions that they would like to ask, or clarifications, or a request for a sticky note.
Yeah, what's true is, you know, this information comes out so quickly, and, you know, and the questions come back just as quickly. So, I mean, it's this constant churning wheel of information and guidance. And I have a lot of compassion for the SBA and Congress, really. I mean, you know, they nobody has a playbook for this. And so it really, I don't want to say that they're making it up as they go along, but it is kind of like that. You know, no one has a playbook for this. This is unprecedented. And but what I do see as a really good sign, like I said earlier, is that, you know, now that we're a few months into this, we are seeing that the powers that be, they are listening to us, and they are taking our feedback into account. So for the lady, the CPA who asked the question earlier, you know, if you go to NFIB, they have so many great resources there for small businesses, and you can participate in their surveys, and their surveys go straight back to Congress. So please take advantage of that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Sophia. I just want to, if anyone has any other questions before we end our conversation. Well, again, in group chat, there's just a ton of links that you're more than welcome to take a moment to save. But yes, I want to say thank you so much to Sophia again for all of your hard work. And
thank you, Sophia.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today, guys.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Maud.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for jumping on. We absolutely appreciate seeing your faces or hearing your voices or just knowing that you're out there. So,
Thank you, Sophia.
Thank you, too.
Thank you, guys.